She found a second wedding ring in his jacket, a ring that didn't belong to her. What was he hiding? That night she followed him into the woods, and what she discovered there would change everything she thought she knew about her marriage. It was just another evening when Rachel stumbled upon the second wedding ring. She had been putting away the laundry when she noticed a glint of gold tucked into the inside pocket of her husband's jacket. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Maybe James had borrowed the jacket from a friend. But when she looked closer, her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just any ring. It looked almost identical to the one she wore on her finger. The same gold band, the same shine, the same subtle engraving. But it wasn't hers. Her hands shook as she held the ring in her palm. Was James hiding another marriage? Another life? Panic began to seep into her mind, but she couldn't let herself jump to conclusions. She needed to understand. She needed to know the truth. The evening was supposed to be peaceful, but now the only thing on her mind was this second ring. What had it meant? Who was it for? And why had he kept it hidden? Rachel thought of all the little things she had dismissed over the past few weeks. The late nights at work, the unexplained phone calls, the way James had become distant, almost cold. She had been too wrapped up in her own routine to notice the cracks in their relationship. But now, everything made sense, and the fear started to take root. She couldn't just sit there and wonder. She needed answers. So that night, when James mentioned he was going for his usual walk in the woods, she decided to follow him. It wasn't like her to sneak around, but this felt different. Something deep inside her pushed her to find out what he was hiding. She slipped on her shoes, grabbed her jacket, and waited. Her heart raced as she tried to calm her nerves. What if she was wrong? What if it wasn't what she thought? But what if it was? The forest was dark, the trees towering high above her as she quietly trailed James. The ground beneath her feet was soft, and each step she took felt like it echoed through the quiet night. The air was thick with the smell of pine, and every rustle of leaves made her jump. She could barely make out James ahead of her, moving at a steady pace, unaware of her presence. She felt a strange mix of fear and determination. She had to know what was going on. As they ventured deeper into the woods, Rachel began to notice something strange. James had stopped glancing at his watch as he usually did. Instead, he was looking around as if searching for something or someone. He stopped for a moment, glanced over his shoulder, and Rachel ducked behind a thick tree, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't want him to see her, but her curiosity drove her forward, step by step, toward him. The deeper into the woods they went, the more Rachel's gut told her that this wasn't just a casual walk. Something was off. James wasn't acting like himself, and the tension in the air grew thicker with every minute. She found herself holding her breath as he reached a small clearing. He stopped and dropped to his knees, as if in prayer or deep concentration. Rachel couldn't see his face, but she could feel something wasn't right. She leaned forward, her body trembling, wondering what he was doing there, alone in the dark. Then she heard a voice. It wasn't James's, a woman's voice. Rachel's heart dropped. Who was he meeting out here, in the middle of the forest? Her mind raced with possibilities. Was he cheating on her? Was he hiding a whole other life, just beyond the reach of her knowing eyes? Rachel moved closer, her feet barely making a sound on the ground. The shadows around her seemed to close in as she watched James speak to the woman. The conversation was low, but she could hear the tension in his voice. He was pleading with her, asking for something Rachel couldn't quite understand. And then it hit her. The woman was holding something. She couldn't make out what it was, but there was a certain heaviness to it, like it meant more than just a casual meeting. Her eyes widened when she saw the woman hand James something small and shiny, a second ring, not just any ring, another wedding ring. Her heart ached as the pieces started to fit together, but the more she understood, the more confused she became. Was this some sort of secret marriage, or was it something more complicated? Before she could make sense of what she had seen, the woman turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving James alone in the clearing. He remained kneeling for a few moments, his face turned toward the ground, as if lost in thought. Rachel didn't know what to do, confront him now or wait until she could understand more. But before she could decide, James stood up and started walking back the way he came. Rachel's pulse raced as she followed him back through the woods, her mind whirling with what she had just witnessed. The second ring, the secret meetings, the mystery woman. What did it all mean? Could she trust the man she had spent so many years with? What was he really hiding? As she made her way back home, the weight of what she had learned settled heavily on her shoulders. She couldn't let this go. She had to confront him, but how could she get the answers she needed without making it seem like she had been spying on him? The idea of confronting James scared her, but it was nothing compared to the fear of living with the uncertainty of not knowing the truth. That night, as she waited for him to return, she tried to gather her thoughts. She needed a plan. She needed to know what to say when he came back. The last thing she wanted was to accuse him of something without all the facts. But what if he was guilty? What if all her suspicions were right? James came home late, just as Rachel had expected. He looked tired, as though the walk through the woods had drained him. He smiled at her, as he always did, but this time something felt off. There was a coldness in his eyes, a guarded look that Rachel had never seen before. He kissed her cheek and went to take off his jacket, but Rachel could barely focus on the gesture. Her mind was still racing with everything she had discovered. She had to act. She had to confront him now before the truth slipped through her fingers like sand. With a deep breath, Rachel walked toward him. She didn't hesitate. "James," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to talk to you about something, about the ring." James froze. His face drained of color for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice smooth but with an underlying tension. Rachel held up the second ring. "I found this in your jacket, and I saw you in the woods tonight. With her." James's eyes widened for just a moment before he looked away. He started to speak, but his words were slow, as if he were trying to find the right way to explain. "Rachel, I can explain everything." Rachel stared at him, the weight of his words lingering in the air between them. She couldn't believe it, not yet. The images from the woods, the second ring, everything she had just discovered. It all felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "Explain? Explain what, James? That you've been keeping a secret marriage from me? That you've been meeting her in the woods behind my back?" Her voice cracked, the frustration and hurt finally breaking through. James's face tightened. He ran a hand through his hair and paced a few steps away from her. Rachel watched him, trying to make sense of the man she thought she knew. "It's not what you think," he began, his voice low. "I never wanted you to find out this way. I never meant for it to happen like this." Rachel's mind raced. How could he say that? She had found the evidence right there in front of her. The second ring, the secret meetings. What more did she need to see? He was hiding something, and it was clear that whatever he had to say wasn't going to make it right. James sighed deeply and looked back at her, his expression filled with regret. "Rachel, this woman, she's part of something bigger. A business deal, a promise I made years ago." His words were rushed, as though he was trying to piece together a story that would make sense of all this. The ring, it wasn't about love, it was about business, and this, everything, it got out of hand. Rachel's head spun. A business deal? A promise? She had heard enough corporate excuses from James in the past, but this was something new. She wasn't sure if she believed him, but there was something in his eyes, guilt, fear, that made her pause. Was it possible that everything she had assumed was wrong? "Then why lie to me?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with pain. "Why keep this from me for so long? Why go behind my back?" James's shoulders slumped. Because I was scared, scared of what you'd think, scared of losing you, scared of everything crumbling down." He took a step closer to her, his voice pleading. "I thought I could manage it all, keep everything together without hurting you. But it all spiraled out of control, Rachel, and now I don't know how to fix it." Rachel was silent for a long moment. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the weight of the unknown. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to think that maybe there was some way to move forward, to understand what was really happening. But the trust she had built with James had been shattered, and no matter how much he begged for her understanding, the hurt was still there, gnawing at her insides. "I need to know the truth, James. All of it," she said softly, her eyes locking with his. "No more lies, no more excuses. What is going on?" He hesitated for a moment, as though weighing whether to tell her everything. Then, with a resigned sigh, he began to speak. "There's more to this than you realize. This woman, her name is Evelyn. She's a business partner from years ago. We made a promise to each other that if things went well with the company, we'd marry, as a form of partnership, not love." His voice dropped to a whisper, almost as though he was ashamed to say it out loud. "But as things got complicated with the company, I tried to keep that promise without it affecting our life. I thought I could handle both, the business and you." Rachel's mind raced as she processed his words. A business marriage? A promise from the past? It felt like a betrayal on a level she couldn't even begin to understand. "So this wasn't even real?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What we had all these years was just nothing?" James shook his head quickly. "No, Rachel. What we have is real. I love you. But this other arrangement, it's a business contract, something I thought would never affect us. I swear I never wanted you to know. I thought I could keep it separate. But it's all falling apart now, and I can't hide it anymore." The words hung in the air, the reality of what James had just confessed slowly sinking in. She wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but instead she found herself quiet, unable to fully process the betrayal. The man she had built her life with had been hiding a whole other life, one that she hadn't known about, one that threatened to tear apart everything she had believed in. She looked at him, trying to read his face. Was he telling the truth? Or was this just another lie to cover up the real reason behind his actions? "I don't know what to believe anymore," Rachel whispered. "You've destroyed everything we had with one lie after another. How am I supposed to trust you again?" James's face crumbled, and for the first time that night, Rachel saw a genuine look of regret. He stepped toward her, his hand outstretched, as though he wanted to comfort her, but she stepped back. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said softly, "but I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt you." Rachel stared at him, her heart heavy with the realization that things between them might never be the same. Could she forgive him? Could she even trust him? She didn't know, and the uncertainty weighed on her. "James," she said, her voice shaky, "I don't know what to do with all this. I need time to think. I need time to figure out if I can even look at you the same way again." James nodded, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and guilt. "I'll give you all the time you need, but just know, Rachel, I'm here. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Rachel turned away, her heart aching with the decision she knew she had to make. She didn't know if she could ever forgive him, but one thing was clear. She couldn't move forward without the truth, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it just yet. As James left the room, Rachel sank onto the couch, the weight of the night's events crashing down on her. What had she just uncovered? What did it all mean? Her mind spun with questions, but one thing was certain. Her life had just changed forever. The days following James's confession felt like a blur. Rachel went through the motions of her daily life, but it was like she was on autopilot, unable to fully engage with anything around her. She couldn't stop thinking about the second ring, about Evelyn, about the secret life James had kept hidden from her for so long. She tried to distract herself with work, with friends, with anything that would keep her mind occupied, but it always circled back to the same thoughts. The betrayal, the lies, the choices she now had to make. James had been quiet after that night. He gave her space, which, in some strange way, only made the situation worse. It was like he was waiting for her to decide what would happen next, to tell him what to do, to guide him back into her good graces. But Rachel couldn't find the words. What could she say to someone who had torn apart everything they had built together? She thought about the forest, about the second ring, about the promise James had made to Evelyn. It felt like a shadow that hung over her, clouding her judgment. How could she move forward, knowing that he had been hiding something so big from her? The trust they had was gone, and no amount of apologies or explanations could change that. One afternoon, as she sat at her kitchen table, Rachel's phone buzzed. It was a message from James asking if she wanted to meet. The words felt like a lifeline to him, a plea for another chance. But Rachel wasn't sure if she was ready. She hadn't made up her mind about him, about what the future could look like for them. Could she forgive him? Was it possible to rebuild what had been broken? With a sigh, she stared at the message, unsure of what to do. Her emotions were still raw, and part of her wanted to just move on, to walk away from everything that had once seemed so perfect. But another part of her, the part that had loved him for so long, wanted to hear him out, wanted to understand why he had made the choices he had. She typed out a response, "Let's meet." An hour later, Rachel found herself standing outside a small cafe, waiting for James to arrive. Her nerves were on edge, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't just a casual meeting. This was about deciding the fate of their relationship, about whether or not there was any hope left to salvage. When James walked up to her, he looked different. There was no more bravado in his steps, no confident smile on his face. He looked weary, as though the weight of everything he had done was finally catching up with him. He offered a small, uncertain smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said quietly, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "I know this is hard, and I know I don't deserve this, but I just wanted to see you. To talk, really." Rachel nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. She wanted to yell at him, to tell him how much he had hurt her. But there was something in his demeanor that made her hesitate. Was this guilt? Regret? Or was it just another manipulation? She couldn't be sure anymore. "James, I don't know what to do with all this," Rachel said, her voice trembling slightly. "You've lied to me for so long. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. And even if I did, I don't know if I can ever forget what I saw in the woods." James's face fell, and he reached for her hand across the table, his touch tentative, like he was afraid she might pull away. "I know," he said softly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, but I need you to know that everything I did, it was a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. And I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry." Rachel's eyes filled with tears as she pulled her hand away from his. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready to be hurt again. But at the same time, she couldn't deny that part of her still cared for him, still wanted to believe that he could change, that he could become the man she had once known. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she whispered. "I don't even know if I want to. But I can't keep living in this limbo. I need to know the truth, the full truth, James. Everything." James's face grew pale as he nodded. "I understand," he said, his voice barely audible. "There's more, Rachel. I didn't just promise Evelyn a business arrangement. There's something deeper than that. Something I didn't want you to know because I knew it would hurt you." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. What could be worse than what he had already confessed? She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she tried to prepare herself for whatever he was about to say. "I didn't just marry her as part of a business deal," James continued, his voice trembling. "I made a promise to her family. They were in trouble, and I agreed to help them. They offered me a stake in the company in exchange for the promise of marriage. I didn't know how to get out of it, and I didn't want to hurt you, so I tried to keep it a secret. But it was never just about love. It was always about the deal. Rachel sat back, stunned into silence. A promise, a business arrangement, a family's debt. This was more complicated than she could have imagined. She had thought James was just hiding an affair, but this was something else entirely. She looked at him, her mind racing with the new information. So all this time while you were with me, you were tied to her, tied to this arrangement? James nodded, his eyes filled with shame. Yes, and I've been trying to fix it, to make it go away without you finding out. But I see now that I can't keep hiding from this. I was selfish, Rachel. I thought I could control it all, but I can't. I never should have lied to you, and I can't keep living like this. I know I've ruined everything. Rachel felt a surge of anger rise within her, but she tamped it down. She had to process this. She had to think. What did it mean for her now? What did it mean for them? Could she rebuild her life after everything James had done? Could she trust him again? Could she even trust herself to make the right decision? I don't know what to say, Rachel whispered, her voice breaking. I need time to think, James. I need time to figure out if there's any way forward, if there's even a chance that this can work. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions for Rachel. Every moment felt like a tug of war inside her head. Part of her wanted to forgive James, to believe in the man she had spent years with. But another part of her felt betrayed in ways she couldn't put into words. The second ring, the hidden promise, the secrecy. It all felt like a weight around her chest that she couldn't shake off. She tried to carry on with her daily routine, but everything felt different now. Her world had shifted, and she didn't know where she stood anymore. She spent long hours alone in her apartment, pacing back and forth, thinking about what James had said. The truth he had confessed was more complicated than she could have imagined. A business arrangement, a promise tied to his future, and the weight of a family's debts. It wasn't just about cheating or a secret affair. It was about power, control, and sacrifices that Rachel couldn't fully grasp. Was he a victim of circumstances, or was he simply a man who had chosen ambition over honesty? Her phone buzzed once again, pulling her from her thoughts. It was James. Can we meet again? I know you need time, but I need to speak with you. I need to explain everything. The message was simple, but the desperation in his words struck her. Part of her wanted to ignore him, to just move on, but another part of her felt a pull. Maybe there was more to the story. Maybe, just maybe, there was something she was missing. She stared at the message, unsure of what to do. Her mind was still a storm of confusion, but her heart still felt connected to him. Maybe he did have more to say. Maybe he had something else that could help her understand. After everything, she owed herself the chance to hear him out, to get the full picture. With a reluctant sigh, she typed out a response. Fine. Let's meet. They agreed to meet at a small park near their apartment, a quiet place where they could talk without interruptions. When Rachel arrived, she saw him sitting on a bench, his back turned toward her, as though he was lost in thought. His usual confident posture was gone. Instead, he looked small, vulnerable, like a man who had lost his way. Rachel felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and hurt that had built up over the past few days. She walked over to him, her steps slow, deliberate. As she approached, James turned around and smiled weakly. "Hey," he said, his voice low, almost uncertain. "Thanks for meeting me." Rachel sat down beside him, her arms crossed. "I don't know how much more there is to say, James," she replied, her voice steady but cold. "You've already told me what I need to know. The second ring, the promise you made to her family, that's more than enough to deal with." James's face fell, and he ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I get it," he said, his voice full of regret. I never should have kept this from you, but it's not as simple as it seems. There's a bigger picture here, Rachel. You deserve to know everything." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Then tell me, what else is there? What more could there possibly be?" He took a deep breath, as though trying to gather his thoughts. "It's about Evelyn's family. They're in deep financial trouble, and I agreed to help them. The marriage, it was supposed to be a way to secure their position in the business world. But things went wrong, Rachel. So wrong." His voice cracked slightly, and he seemed to hesitate, unsure whether to continue. Rachel's heart raced as she waited for him to elaborate. "What do you mean?" "What went wrong?" she asked, her voice growing more tense. She wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever else he was about to reveal, but at this point she had to know. James swallowed hard, his eyes searching hers for some sign of understanding. "They lied to me, Rachel. Evelyn's family. They manipulated me. They made promises that weren't true. And when the business started failing, they turned to me for more. More money, more influence. I couldn't back out, not without destroying everything I had worked for. I couldn't leave you for her, but I also couldn't walk away from the deal. It was a mess, and I thought I could manage it. But I was wrong. I thought I could keep it all separate, but I failed." Rachel sat in stunned silence, trying to process what he had just said. Was this really the reason for all the lies? Was this the heart of the issue? A tangled web of debts, promises, and family obligations that had forced James into a corner he couldn't escape? It almost sounded like a bad business deal gone too far, but Rachel wasn't sure whether to sympathize with him or feel betrayed all over again. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You want me to just forgive you? To understand that you did all this for the business, for the company, that you thought it was okay to keep this secret from me?" James's face twisted with regret. "No, I don't expect you to forgive me, Rachel. But I need you to understand something. Everything I did because I thought I was protecting us. I thought I was protecting our future. But I see now how wrong that was. And I'm sorry. I should have come to you sooner. I should have trusted you enough to tell you the truth." Rachel's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she felt the weight of everything crash down on her. All the years they had spent together, all the love she had given him, it all seemed like a lie now. She had loved a man who had kept so many secrets from her, a man who had put everything else before their marriage. Could she ever get past that? Could she rebuild the trust that had been shattered? Could she even trust herself to make the right decision? She wiped her eyes, not wanting to let him see her weakness. "I don't know if I can do this, James. I don't know if I can go back to the way things were. Everything has changed, and I'm not sure if I can live with what you've done. I thought we had a future together. But now, I don't know what that even looks like." James reached out to touch her arm, his grip gentle but firm. "I know I've ruined everything, Rachel, but I'm asking you to give me a chance. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, to prove to you that I can be the man you need me to be. Just give me that chance." Rachel pulled her arm away, a part of her screaming for freedom, for an end to the pain. But there was another part of her, a part that remembered their good times, their shared history, and the love they had once had. She was torn. Could she forgive him? Could she trust him again? Or was it time to walk away and never look back? The answers weren't clear, and for the first time in a long time, Rachel didn't know what she should do next. "I need more time," she said quietly, standing up from the bench. "I can't make this decision right now, James. I can't." And with that, she walked away, the weight of the world on her shoulders, unsure of what the future held, but certain that her life was forever changed. Days turned into weeks, and Rachel found herself in a constant state of limbo. The time she had asked for hadn't brought her the clarity she had hoped for. If anything, it only made her feel more confused. She tried to go on with her life as usual, but it was hard to ignore the nagging thoughts about James and the mess he had created. She had spent so many years trusting him, believing that they were building something real. Now, every moment felt like a reminder of the betrayal, The secret ring, the business deal, the lies. It all seemed so much bigger than she had ever imagined. James tried to reach out to her, of course, sending text messages and calling, asking for another chance to talk. Each time she ignored him. She wasn't ready to face him again, not yet. She needed space to think, to clear her mind. But every time she looked at her phone, she saw his name, and it felt like a weight on her chest. Could she really move on from everything they had? Or was there still a way forward? One evening, as she sat at home, nursing a cup of tea and staring out the window, Rachel received a message from an unknown number. She hesitated before opening it, but something told her she needed to. The message was short, but it sent a chill down her spine. "We need to talk. It's about James and the deal." Rachel's pulse quickened. Who was this? What did they know? And why were they reaching out to her now? Her mind raced with possibilities. Was it someone connected to James? Or was it someone who had been part of the deal he had mentioned? She couldn't ignore it. Not when it seemed like the answers to everything she had been wondering were just one message away. With a deep breath, Rachel replied, "Who is this?" "What do you know about James?" Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed, but she couldn't stop herself from hitting send. She had to know what was going on. The response came almost immediately. "My name is Evelyn. I need you to understand that what you think you know about James is only part of the story. There's a lot more at stake here, and I'm afraid it's about to get worse for all of us." Rachel's heart stopped. Evelyn. The name sent a rush of emotions flooding back. Confusion, anger, betrayal. This was the woman James had been tied to, the woman he had promised to marry. But why was she reaching out now? What did she mean by, "It's about to get worse"? Her mind was spinning, but she knew she couldn't ignore this. She had to know everything, even if it hurt. She typed quickly, her words sharp. "What do you want?" "What's going on with James?" The reply came quickly again. "Meet me. I'm not safe here anymore. If you want the truth, you'll have to come to me. There's a lot I can't say over text." Rachel felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. She didn't know what to think. Evelyn was involved in the same web of lies and secrets that had torn her world apart. Could she really trust her? And yet there was something in Evelyn's message that rang true. Rachel's gut told her that there was more to this story, more than James had let on. It felt like she was on the verge of uncovering something that could change everything, something that might finally give her the answers she was looking for. After a long moment of hesitation, Rachel made up her mind. She couldn't keep running from the truth. She had to meet Evelyn. Maybe this was the final piece of the puzzle she had been searching for. Rachel replied. "Where and when?" Evelyn's response was quick. "Tomorrow, at the old cafe by the bridge. I'll be there at noon." The next day, Rachel arrived at the cafe, her mind heavy with questions. The little place was tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, a place she and James used to visit when they were just starting out, before everything became so complicated. The memories of their early days together hit her like a wave, but she pushed them aside. This wasn't about the past anymore. This was about finding out the truth. She spotted Evelyn almost immediately. She looked different from what Rachel had imagined, nervous, frazzled, and not at all the confident woman James had made her out to be. Evelyn was sitting at a table in the corner, her eyes darting around the room as though she was afraid someone might see her. When she saw Rachel approach, she quickly stood up, her face filled with a mixture of apprehension and urgency. "You came," Evelyn said quietly, almost as though she couldn't believe it herself. "I wasn't sure you would." Rachel didn't respond immediately. She took a seat, her eyes locked onto Evelyn's. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Evelyn hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. She finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about James, about the deal he made with my family." She glanced around the cafe, her eyes filled with anxiety. You need to understand that everything he told you, about the business, about the marriage, it was only half the story. The real reason he got involved with me, it's not what you think. It's worse. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She had been prepared for more lies, but this? She wasn't ready for this. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice shaky now. What could be worse than what he's already told me? Evelyn looked around once more, ensuring no one was listening. She leaned forward, her voice trembling. The deal wasn't just about the company, Rachel. It wasn't just about business. My family. They were involved in something dangerous, something illegal. James didn't just marry me for business, he was trying to save himself, and you, from something much darker. But now, it's all falling apart. Rachel's head spun as she processed Evelyn's words. Dark? Illegal? What was she talking about? And why was James involved in something like that? Evelyn continued, her voice barely audible. There are people, powerful people, who won't stop until they get what they want. James promised he could deliver, but now he's trapped, and so are we. Rachel's world tilted. Everything she thought she knew was being shattered once again. There was more to James's secret life than she could ever have imagined. She had walked into this meeting looking for answers, but now she wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth that was about to be revealed. Rachel sat frozen, absorbing Evelyn's words, but nothing seemed to make sense. The calm of the cafe around her felt like a distant echo as her mind raced. The woman across from her was clearly scared, the way her hands shook and her eyes flickered nervously. This wasn't just some business deal gone wrong. Evelyn was talking about something much darker, something that involved danger and threats, far beyond anything Rachel had imagined. For a long moment, Rachel didn't know how to respond. Her throat felt tight, her chest heavy. The weight of Evelyn's confession was suffocating. How had she gotten involved in something so dangerous? How had James, the man she had loved and trusted, ended up tangled in this mess? Rachel wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the fear in Evelyn's eyes kept her from doing so. Finally, Rachel found her voice. What do you mean by dangerous? What could be so bad that James would be involved in it? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though it wavered slightly with disbelief. Evelyn glanced nervously around again, her eyes scanning the room. It was as if she was waiting for someone to appear, someone who might overhear them. It's about money laundering, Rachel, Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. My family, they've been involved in illegal transactions for years. But when things started to unravel, they needed someone with connections, someone who could get them out of trouble, someone who could control the situation. James was that person. Rachel's stomach dropped. Money laundering. It was like a punch to the gut. She had always known that James's work had been high stakes, but this was something completely different. But why would James get involved in something like that? Rachel asked, shaking her head, still trying to make sense of it all. Why didn't he tell me? Why keep it from me? Evelyn looked away, her eyes filled with regret. Because he thought he could handle it alone, she said quietly. He thought if he kept it secret, it wouldn't affect you. But it's already affecting you, Rachel. It's affecting both of us. The people James got involved with, they're not the kind of people you can just walk away from. They're dangerous. And now, they know you're a part of all this too. Rachel's heart began to race. Dangerous? What did Evelyn mean by that? Who were these people? What would they do if they found out about her involvement? Her mind was flooded with questions, but it felt like everything was moving too fast for her to catch up. She wanted to get up, leave, walk away from all of this. But she knew she couldn't. Not now. So what does this have to do with me? Rachel asked, her voice sharp. Why are you telling me this? What's your part in all this? Evelyn hesitated, looking down at her hands. Because James isn't the only one in danger, she said, her voice trembling, and neither are you. The people we're dealing with, They don't care about anything except their money. If they find out you're connected to James, if they think you're a threat, they'll come after you too." The words hit Rachel like a ton of bricks. She felt like she couldn't breathe. The life she had built with James, the trust they had shared, everything was crumbling around her. How had things spiraled this far out of control? How had she gotten caught up in a situation she had never asked for? Rachel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Evelyn looked up at her, panic in her eyes. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice rising with urgency. "I need to think," Rachel said, her mind spinning as she tried to process everything. "I need to figure out what to do. I can't be part of this. I can't be involved in something this dangerous." Evelyn reached out to grab her arm, her grip surprisingly firm. "Rachel, you don't have a choice anymore," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "This isn't just about James anymore. This is about your life. If you walk away from this, if you turn your back on everything, they will find you. And when they do, it won't just be James they'll come after. They'll come for you too." The fear in Evelyn's voice sent a chill down Rachel's spine. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was different. She was in over her head, and she knew it. But what could she do? How could she protect herself from something so much bigger than anything she had ever imagined? Rachel pulled away from Evelyn's grip, her mind racing. "What am I supposed to do then? What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and frustration. Evelyn stood up slowly, her face filled with resolve. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know the truth," she said, her voice firm. "But more than that, you need to make a choice. You can either stay in the dark, hide from this, and hope they don't find you, or you can stand up, face it head on, and figure out how to stop it before it's too late." Rachel felt her pulse quicken. She didn't know if she was ready for this, for everything that was about to unfold. But Evelyn was right. She couldn't keep running, couldn't keep pretending that this wasn't happening. She had to decide. She had to do something before it was too late. Rachel took a deep breath, looking Evelyn straight in the eyes. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice steady despite the fear swirling inside her. "But I need to know exactly what I'm up against. I need you to tell me everything." Evelyn nodded, her face grim. "You'll know soon enough," she said, "but we don't have much time. The people who are involved in this, they don't wait around, and neither can we." As Rachel left the cafe, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each more terrifying than the last. She had just taken a step into a world she never imagined, and she had no idea where it would lead. All she knew was that she couldn't go back. There was no turning around now. The game had changed, and she was in it whether she wanted to be or not. The days after meeting Evelyn felt like a blur. Rachel's mind was consumed with everything she had learned, and the fear she had felt in the cafe now seemed to follow her wherever she went. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows, waiting to catch her off guard. Every noise outside her apartment, every knock on her door, set her on edge. She found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering who was watching. It was like her world had shifted into a nightmare, and she couldn't escape it. James had called several times, but she didn't pick up. She wasn't ready to face him, not yet. She didn't know what to say to him. Everything he had confessed, the deal with Evelyn's family, the illegal activities, it felt like a web of lies and deceit that she couldn't untangle. And now Evelyn was telling her that there were people involved who were willing to go to any lengths to protect their money, even if it meant hurting her. She didn't know how to process it all. Could she really trust James after everything? Could she trust anyone anymore? But despite her fear and her anger, there was one thing Rachel couldn't deny. She still loved him. The man she had married, the man she had built her life with, wasn't just a stranger to her. He was someone she had shared everything with, someone she had once trusted, and that made everything even harder to understand. How had they gone from planning a future together to this dangerous mess? Was there any way back? One evening, as Rachel sat in her apartment, the doorbell rang, snapping her from her thoughts. She froze. She hadn't been expecting anyone. Slowly, she stood up and walked to the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She hesitated for a moment and then opened it. Standing there, looking as anxious and tense as she felt, was James. He was holding a small envelope in his hand, his face drawn with exhaustion. "Rachel, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. "I know you've been avoiding me, but I swear to you, everything I've told you is the truth. I've been trying to protect you, trying to keep you out of this mess, but I can't do it alone. I need you to trust me. Please." Rachel stared at him, her mind torn between the anger she felt and the love that still lingered. "You think I can trust you?" she said, her voice cold. "After everything that's happened? After everything you've kept from me? You want me to just believe you again? You want me to put myself in danger for you?" James's expression faltered, and for the first time, Rachel saw the fear in his eyes. Real fear. "I know I messed up," he said, his voice low, "but this isn't just about us anymore. This is bigger than both of us. I've made mistakes, and I've lied, but I've never meant to hurt you. I've never meant for you to get involved in this. But now, you're in danger, Rachel, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Rachel felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She knew he was telling the truth about one thing. She was in danger. The people he was involved with, the money laundering, the promises he had made, it had all brought her into a situation that was far beyond anything she could have ever imagined. But the trust was gone. The foundation they had built their life on had been cracked, and no amount of apologies could fix it. "I don't know what to do anymore, James," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep loving you after everything that's happened." James stepped forward, his hand reaching out as though he wanted to touch her, but Rachel instinctively stepped back. "Rachel, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I know I've ruined everything. But I'm begging you, give me a chance. Please, let me make things right. Let me fix this. Let me prove to you that I can be the man you thought I was." Rachel shook her head, feeling the weight of his words settle heavily in her chest. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to reach out and forgive him, to pretend that things could go back to the way they were before all of this started. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. They couldn't just go back. The past was gone, and she was staring into an uncertain future. "I don't know if I can, James," she said softly. "I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I can live in a world where everything we had was built on lies." James's face crumpled, and for a moment, Rachel saw the man she had once loved, the man who had stood by her side, who had made her believe in their future together. "I understand," he said quietly, his voice filled with sadness. "I just want you to be safe, Rachel. That's all I care about now. If you can't forgive me, if you can't be with me, I'll respect that. But I need you to understand that everything I did because I was trying to protect you." The words hung in the air, and Rachel didn't know how to respond. She wanted to scream at him, to ask how he could have kept so many secrets, to demand answers for everything he had done. But something in his voice, something in the way he looked at her, stopped her. She wasn't sure if it was guilt or desperation, but she could see that he was broken. He wasn't the man he had been before. Something had changed in him, and maybe it wasn't just the secrets he had kept from her. Maybe it was the weight of the things he had done that had finally caught up with him. "I need to think, James," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to make a decision about what comes next. I can't do this right now. I'm sorry." James nodded, his face defeated. "I understand," he whispered. "I'll give you the time you need. Just know that I love you, Rachel. I always have." As Rachel closed the door behind him, she leaned against it, her heart heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. She had a decision to make, and it wasn't going to be easy. Could she forgive him? Could she trust him again? Or was it time to walk away, to leave the life they had built behind, and start fresh. The following days were a blur of uncertainty. Rachel felt as though she were caught in a storm, unsure of which direction to take. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw James's face, is desperate, broken, pleading with her to give him a second chance. Part of her wanted to reach out, to hold on to the man she had once known. But the other part of her, the part that had been betrayed, was terrified of making the wrong choice. She spent hours in her apartment pacing back and forth, trying to make sense of everything. The things Evelyn had said echoed in her mind, each word more haunting than the last. This is bigger than both of us. The warning about the people James had become involved with kept coming back to her. Was it possible to escape this? To walk away from the danger without paying a price? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something huge, something she couldn't control, and she didn't know if she was ready to face it. Rachel had avoided James's calls, his messages, for days, but now, as the silence stretched on, she realized she couldn't avoid him forever. She had to make a decision. The weight of indecision was crushing her, and the longer she waited, the harder it became to breathe. She needed to face him, to hear him out one last time, to decide if there was a way forward or if it was time to say goodbye for good. That afternoon, as she sat in the quiet of her living room, Rachel picked up her phone. Her finger hovered over the screen for a moment before she finally hit the call button. The phone rang once, twice, and then, finally, James answered. "Rachel?" His voice was cautious, like he wasn't sure if she was going to hang up. "I wasn't sure if you'd call." Rachel took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice steady, but there was a tremor underneath. "We need to figure this out. I can't keep living in this limbo." James's voice softened. "I'm here, Rachel. Whatever you need to say, I'll listen." There was a long pause, and Rachel found herself at a loss for words. How do you speak to the person you once loved when everything has been shattered? How do you find the words to make sense of a situation that doesn't make sense at all? I don't know if I can forgive you," she said finally, the words feeling heavier than she expected. "Everything you've done, everything you've kept from me, it's more than I can process. And then you brought me into this, into something dangerous. I don't even know if I can trust you anymore." James was silent for a moment, and when he spoke again, there was a rawness to his voice that Rachel hadn't heard before. "I know," he said quietly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even deserve your trust. But, Rachel, I need you to understand that I never wanted to put you in danger. I never wanted you to be a part of this. It was always about trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe. I thought I could manage it, but I was wrong." L. Rachel closed her eyes, her mind whirling with conflicting emotions. Could she trust him again? Could she really believe that he had tried to protect her all along, even as he kept secret deals and dangerous people in his life? She wasn't sure. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, and the idea of opening herself up to that again felt like too much to bear. "You said you loved me," Rachel continued, her voice breaking slightly. "But how could you love me and keep all of this from me? How could you hide something so big, something that could destroy everything, and still expect me to stand by your side?" James's voice was soft but firm. "Because I thought I was protecting you," he repeated. "I didn't want you to know. I thought if you didn't know, you wouldn't have to be a part of it. I didn't want you to be dragged into something like this. But the truth is, I can't protect you anymore by keeping you in the dark, and I can't fix this without your help, Rachel. I know it sounds like a lie, but this isn't just about me anymore. It's about both of us, and we're both in danger." Rachel felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. The danger wasn't just something abstract anymore, it was real, and she was part of it. Evelyn had warned her, but now it felt like the walls were closing in. The people James had been dealing with were still out there, and now they knew about her. If they came after James, they might come after her too. Her head was spinning. "What do you want from me, James?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What am I supposed to do with all of this?" He was quiet for a moment before he answered. "I need you to trust me, Rachel. I need you to trust that I can fix this, that I can make it right. But I can't do it alone. I can't do it without you." Rachel didn't know what to say. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that he could fix everything, that there was a way out of this nightmare. But the trust had been broken, and trust was the foundation of everything. Without it, could they ever go back? Could they move forward? "I don't know if I can do this, James," Rachel said, the words heavy with finality. "I don't know if I can live in a world where everything we had is tainted with lies and danger. I don't know if I can be the person you want me to be." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When James finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more resigned. "I understand, Rachel. I know I've put you in a position you never asked for, and I know I've failed you. But I'm asking for one last chance. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Rachel closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She was standing on the edge of a decision she wasn't sure she was ready to make. Could she trust him? Could she forgive him? Was there even a way back? Or was it time to finally walk away? She didn't have the answers yet. But she knew one thing. Whatever choice she made, it would change everything. And for the first time in a long time, she realized that her future was no longer in her hands alone. The decision to move forward or walk away weighed heavily on Rachel's heart. She couldn't shake the constant battle inside her. It was like a storm brewing in her chest, each emotion fighting to be heard: love, betrayal, fear, and the desperate need for peace. She had spent her whole life trusting James, believing in him, and now she was questioning everything. In the days that followed, Rachel found herself standing at a crossroads, staring into the uncertainty of her future. She avoided going out much, stayed inside, trying to keep her mind busy. The world outside seemed distant, like she was living in a bubble, trapped in her own thoughts. She had tried to talk to friends about everything that had happened, but it felt like no one could understand the complexity of the situation. No one could understand the tug-of-war inside her heart. And even if they could, how could they offer advice when the situation was so unique, so messy? So Rachel remained alone with her thoughts, questioning what was real and what was a lie, what was worth saving and what was beyond repair. The calls from James continued, each one more desperate than the last. His voice, always calm but edged with fear, pleaded with her to reconsider. He told her over and over again that he was working on a plan to get them both out of this mess, that he had a way to make it all right. But Rachel couldn't ignore the doubt that lingered. Could he really make it right? Was she willing to risk everything she had, her safety, her peace, her trust, just for the chance to rebuild something that might never be the same? One night, as Rachel lay in bed staring up at the ceiling, she made a decision. It wasn't a clear, confident resolution, but it was a decision nonetheless. She couldn't live like this anymore. She couldn't keep floating in limbo, hoping things would get better on their own. She had to take control of her own life, even if it meant facing the uncertainty head-on. She grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling as she unlocked it. James's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment, Rachel hesitated. The weight of her decision felt heavier than ever. But she couldn't keep avoiding him. She had to talk to him, to hear his side, to figure out what the future held, or if there even was one for them. With a deep breath, she tapped the call button. "Hello?" James answered immediately, his voice full of relief. "I'm coming over," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We need to talk." His voice cracked with hope. "Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. I'll be waiting." Rachel hung up and got dressed, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear, anger, and a strange sense of resolve. She didn't know what she would find when she saw him again. But she knew she couldn't live in uncertainty forever. She had to know if there was a way forward, or if it was time to walk away from everything. When Rachel arrived at James's apartment, It felt like stepping into a different world. The place was quiet, too quiet. The lights were dim, and the air felt heavy with unspoken words. James was standing by the door, his face etched with exhaustion. When he saw Rachel, a mixture of relief and nervousness crossed his face. He stepped aside, letting her enter. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel nodded, but didn't say anything at first. She needed space, time to gather her thoughts before she spoke. She sat down on the couch, her body tense, her mind racing. James sat down across from her, his eyes on the floor. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "I don't know where to start, James," she said, her voice shaky but resolute. "Everything has changed. Everything I thought I knew about us, about you, is gone. I can't just pretend like nothing happened. You kept so many things from me, so many secrets. And now you want me to trust you again?" James's gaze flickered up to meet hers. I know I don't deserve your trust. I've hurt you in ways I can't undo, and I can't change the past. But I swear, Rachel, I never wanted any of this. I never wanted you to be dragged into it. I thought I could handle it all. I thought I could protect you from the truth, but now I see how wrong I was." Rachel let his words hang in the air, her mind spinning. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that his intentions had been good, that he had truly tried to protect her. But it was hard, so hard to believe when everything had been built on lies. "James, do you even understand how much this has hurt me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How much I've been betrayed? All these years I thought we were building a life together, and now I'm left with nothing but questions and uncertainty. How can I ever trust you again after everything?" James looked pained, his eyes filled with guilt and remorse. "I get it, Rachel. I understand. And I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I need you to know that I'm not the person I've been acting like. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I still love you, and I want to fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. But I need you to help me, Rachel. I need you to fight for us." Rachel closed her eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. She loved him. She always had. But was love enough to rebuild the trust that had been shattered? Was love enough to take on the danger that had come into their lives? She wasn't sure. "You don't get it, James," Rachel said softly, shaking her head. "You're asking me to trust you, to stand by you, and I can't. I can't ignore the fact that we've been living in a lie. I can't pretend that everything is fine when it's not. And I can't keep living in fear, not knowing if we're safe." James's face crumpled as he nodded. "I understand. I'm sorry, Rachel. I never wanted you to live like this. I never wanted you to be in danger. But if we're going to get through this, we need to face it together. We need to find a way out of this mess. You and me. We can do it if we stick together." Rachel's heart ached at his words, but the fear, the doubt, was too much. "I don't know, James. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can keep living in a world of secrets and lies." James reached out, his hand hovering in the air before gently resting on hers. "I know I've failed you. I know I've hurt you. But I can't lose you. Please, I'm begging you. Let's try to fix this, together." Rachel stared at him, feeling the conflict rip through her. She wanted to believe him, to let herself trust again. But the scars of betrayal ran deep, and the danger that still loomed over them was real. She wasn't sure if she could handle it. Not again. The decision Rachel faced wasn't just about trusting James. It was about deciding who she wanted to be, what kind of life she wanted to live moving forward. Did she want to continue with James, to try to rebuild everything they had? Or was it time to walk away, to sever the ties and leave behind the life they once shared? For days, Rachel weighed her options, replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. The love she had for James was still there, buried beneath the hurt and anger. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that love alone couldn't fix everything. It couldn't undo the secrets, the lies, the danger that had infiltrated their lives. Rachel found herself standing in front of the mirror one morning, staring at her reflection. The woman she saw staring back at her wasn't the same woman who had fallen in love with James years ago. She had changed. Life had forced her to grow, to face things she never thought she'd have to face. The innocence, the trust, the belief in a perfect future. They were gone. What she had now was a harsh reality. She couldn't live like this anymore. She couldn't keep second-guessing herself, wondering if she was making the right choice. It was time to make a decision, and that decision had to come from within her. That afternoon, Rachel called James, asking him to meet. She wasn't sure how the conversation would go, but she knew it was time to face the truth. She had to stop running from the reality of the situation, stop clinging to a dream that was slipping away. James arrived at Rachel's apartment that afternoon, his face hopeful but guarded. He knew this conversation could be the turning point, the moment that would decide everything. He stepped into her apartment, his gaze immediately falling on her. "I've been thinking a lot," Rachel said quietly, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I've been thinking about everything, about us, about the past, about the future, and I've come to a decision." James held his breath, waiting for her to continue. His heart was pounding in his chest, fear gnawing at him. Was this the end? Would she walk away from him, from everything they had? "I can't go back, James," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep living in the past, pretending everything will be okay. Too much has happened. Too much has been broken." James's face fell, and for a moment, Rachel saw the man he once was. Vulnerable, unsure, desperate. She felt a pang in her chest. This wasn't easy. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was what needed to happen. "I can't keep living in fear, James. I can't keep waiting for things to get better when I don't even know if they ever will." James nodded, his eyes filling with unshed tears. "I understand, Rachel. I know I've failed you, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you, and I always will." Rachel's heart ached as she stepped back, the tears welling in her eyes. It was time. The final chapter of their story had come to an end, and there was no going back. "I'll always love you too, James," she said softly, "but it's over." As Rachel watched him leave, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had made her decision. It was time to let go. In the days that followed, Rachel felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The decision to end things with James hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. As she moved through the motions of her life, there was a quiet emptiness that settled in. For so long, her world had revolved around James, around their shared dreams, their plans, and the life they had built together. Now, it felt as though she were starting over from scratch. She found herself spending more time with friends and family, reconnecting with the people she had neglected over the past few years. Slowly, the space that James had occupied in her life began to fill with new connections and new experiences. There were moments of doubt, of course, times when she missed the way things used to be, when she longed for the security and the love she thought she had with him. But those moments grew less frequent, and as time went on, Rachel realized that she was rediscovering herself. She was no longer defined by her relationship with James. She was carving out a future on her own, and it was frightening, yes, but also liberating. The weight of the past still lingered, but it no longer controlled her. She had made the choice to let go, and as she did, she began to understand just how strong she truly was. The scars of betrayal would take time to heal, but Rachel knew that she was capable of moving forward, of building a life where she wasn't bound by the lies and secrets of the past. As the weeks passed, Rachel's life began to shift in ways she hadn't expected. She found herself pursuing old passions that she had set aside for years. She returned to painting, something she had loved as a child, and she started taking long walks in the park, enjoying the peace that came with being alone, surrounded by nature. It wasn't that she didn't miss James. There were moments when the memory of their good times together hit her like a wave, and she would pause, allowing herself a moment of grief. But those moments were fleeting, and each time she felt herself growing stronger. Rachel also began to embrace the uncertainty of the future. She had spent so much of her life planning for tomorrow, for the life she thought she would have with James, that she had forgotten how to enjoy the present. Now, she took things one day at a time, focusing on the small victories, the way she felt when she finished a painting, or the way the sun felt on her face during her walks. Life, it seemed, was full of new opportunities, new beginnings, and Rachel was ready to embrace them, no matter how daunting they seemed. And then, one afternoon, as she was sitting at a cafe with a friend, she received a message. It was from Evelyn. Rachel hadn't heard from her since the day they had met in the cafe, when everything had seemed so chaotic and uncertain. She opened the message, her heart racing as she read it. "I know things have been hard for you, Rachel, but I wanted to let you know that I'm finally free. The people who were after us after James, they've been dealt with. It's over now. I'm safe. I hope you're doing okay, and I hope you find peace. You deserve it." Rachel sat back in her chair, a sense of relief washing over her. She had feared that the shadow of the danger James had been involved with would follow her for a long time, but now she could breathe again. The chapter she had been stuck in was finally closing, and it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders. She could finally move on, free from the fear and the uncertainty. The next few months passed quickly, and Rachel's life began to take shape in ways she hadn't anticipated. She found a new job, one that she truly enjoyed, and she moved into a small apartment in a quieter neighborhood, far from the memories of her life with James. It wasn't the life she had envisioned, but it was her life. It was messy, it was uncertain, but it was also hers to shape. James never reached out again. He had tried once in the weeks after their breakup to send a message, asking if they could talk. But Rachel had ignored it. She knew that any conversation with him would only open old wounds, and she wasn't ready for that. She had to protect herself, to move forward without looking back. She had learned the hard way that sometimes letting go was the only way to heal. One day, as Rachel sat on her balcony, watching the sunset, she realized something. The world was still full of possibilities. There would be good days and bad days, moments of doubt and moments of joy. But that was life. And she was learning to embrace it all. She wasn't the same person she had been before. She was stronger, wiser, and more in control of her own destiny. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the ending she had expected, but it was her ending. And in that, Rachel found a quiet sense of hope. The future was uncertain, but it was hers to create. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to face it.